Okay guys, welcome to module 5.4, right? So this is never go red. And I won't lie, sometimes I'm guilty of not following this to the dot. But it's super important, right? We want to keep our funded accounts forever, right? And we want to continue scaling it. A lot of ftmo traders, so I think 95 to 99% of people are unable to pass the ftmo challenge, right? And then I think only 10% of the ones who pass, manage to pass the verification, right? And of those people who pass the verification, I think only 7% get funded from there. And then of those 7% that get funded, I think only 1 or 2% actually retain their funded account for more than 4 months, right? So it comes down to risk management, execution, and everything we've talked about, right? So what I mean by this is you need a protocol, right? So drawdown, I'll call it DD, right? Drawdown, let's say we're starting off with 100K, right? And we take our first loss, which is minus 0.5, right? Which puts us at 99,500. Hope this is accurate. Yeah, I think so. Right. Now, let's just say we take 6 losses in a row, right? That'll put us at around 97,000, right? 3%. So, and then we finally win. Now, at this point, we're already losing faith in the system. We're losing faith in ourselves. Well, that's just me, right? So the way that I used to trade before, even sometimes now, there's things that creep up on you when you start being on a losing streak. You feel like the world's against you, right? But really, it's just variance, right? And at this point, this is where emotions. When you minus 3%, right? And if you include maybe a mistake, maybe minus 3.5, right? You added some mistakes in the human error, right? There always has to be room for human error in the system. If it's barely profitable on paper, with no human error, that's when you know the system's really bad, right? It needs to account for human error, right? Because there's always going to be some mistakes along the way, right? You can reduce the error, but never like 100% remove it, right? It's always going to be like maybe you entered slightly early, something had a bad day, maybe slightly over risked, something you didn't calculate properly and stuff like that. So at minus 3%, for me personally, a long time ago, I even noticed that, hey, this is affecting me personally now. It's basically saying, am I a good trader? All of this noise comes into your mind. And that's when you start to kind of, you increase risk to slightly, maybe now you went to, okay, I'm going to increase 7.5% risk. I want to risk 1%, one trade will recover me, all of this kind of stuff, right? But the truth is, even if you took 6 losses, all you need is 1,500 plus 1,500, which is two wins to put you back to 100,000, right? But I have a more, so I try to avoid going deeper into drawdown because I just don't like saying it. It just affects psychology a lot more, and this gives you more breathing room than what I'm going to show you now. So the moment you go from 0.5, because once you hit this point, nothing's withdrawable also, right? Once you hit 99,500 after the first loss, what you can do, and what I suggest that you do, is drop your each risk now to 0.25%. So now, if I'm 99, if you take another loss, you're only losing that much, right? And now if you take another 250 risk, you'll be back to break even, right? But now, instead of only, because if you take, now you have 19 trades left, right? If you're risking 500. If it's 500 and you have lose 20 in a row, your account's blown, right? But when you drop to 0.2.5, all of a sudden, your 20 trades means now you have to lose minus 40 trades in a row for you to blow the account, which is extremely like negligible, right? It's unlikely with the system, with the system's win rate too. So this is the variance, and it's basically not possible. And what this also does is kind of protects your psychology. When you see it as 994, you're like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna risk 250. And when you actually risk 250, it's even smaller amount on your psychology, because now it's like, it's only 250. I'm gonna enter the next trade. Another 250, another 250, and you're taking losses these days. And you take another 250, and you realize, hey, wait a minute, I'm only 98,000 down now, right? That means I'm only 2,000 away, right? Which means I'm only minus 2% after so many losses, right? And then when you actually come back, you'll be like 750 plus 750, which is already 1,500 plus 750, 3 trades, and all of a sudden you're back in profit again, right? But it basically allows you to protect your psychology, right? Protect your psychology, protect your account, increases the decreases the stress on you, basically. Right? Then there's the inverse of this, right? The inverse of this is scaling up by 0.5% and then scaling up to 1%. Right? So what I like to do is, I've also sometimes not so fond of this, right? I mean, I don't use it as much as I should, right? So what I mean by this is, if you start off with 100,000, right? 100,000 USD, and now you risk 500, right? If you risk 500 and you win the first trade, your account is now 1,500, right? That means now, instead of you continue using a fixed risk, why not use, because you already have a buffer now of that much, 0.5%, right? 0.75, right? So you'll be risking 750 a trade, right? That means now you can lose 2 losses and be back to break even, right? You'll be back to break even. You lose 1, you lose 2, you're like, I'm back to break even. So you'll be using 0.5% back at break even, and then if you go to 9905, you use 0.25 to scale down and then scale back up, right? So the moment you hit let's just say you are 1,500 up, you'll have 2 wins buffer, right? And now let's say now you're like, okay, since I have 2 wins buffer, let's increase, so your next win again will be 500. So what's 0.75 or 1,500? I think it's around 2,000, right? Let's pull out the calculator. So it'll be basically 750 times 3, 250, right? So you'll be 3,750, and let's just say you win again, which is going to be 10,000. 10 is basically a 750 increase, right? So 3,750 plus 2,250, 6,000, right? And now you're at 6,000. So now you're like, okay, let's make 6,000 my new buffer. What does that mean? That means that now if I take 2 losses, minus 2, which will put me at 1,400, I will go back to using 0.75% risk, right? But otherwise, I will now go to 1% risk, right? What that means is now that every time I win, I will go from 10,000 to from 6,000 profit up to 9,000 to 12,000. And once you hit this kind, you can just stick with the 1%, right? But the moment you start going back into drawdown, you scale down. You keep scaling down your risk. Okay. But this is the power of dynamic risk, guys. So the moment you draw down, you're on defense. The moment you're getting back into profit, you're pulling out your sword and you're ready for the battle. Once you start beating a lot of the enemies and you get back into profit, now you pull out the guns and you go 1%, right? But this is how you basically maximize profits from Profirm, guys. I will see you guys in the next module.